Anthony Hopkins finally comes clean about Laurence Olivier at the age of 87. On December 31, 1937, Anthony Hopkins was born Philip Anthony Hopkins in Port Talbot, a tiny Welsh village. From modest beginnings, he rose to become one of the most renowned and versatile actors of the contemporary day. His mother, Annie Muriel, provided the family with love and support, while his father, Richard Arthur Hopkins, worked as a baker. Young Hopkins, who was raised in a working-class household, frequently felt uncomfortable in conventional academic settings. Rather, he was drawn to the arts and developed an almost natural affinity for acting, music, and sketching. These formative encounters paved the way for a creative spirit that would eventually enthrall audiences throughout. Hopkins served in the British Army for 2 years after completing his training at the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama. He was admitted to one of the world's most prominent acting institutions, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, in 1961. Along with technique and discipline, his time at RADA gave him the self-assurance he needed to pursue a career in professional stage acting. Sir Laurence Olivier quickly became interested in him and extended an invitation for him to join the National Theatre. Olivier was later recognized by Hopkins as a key mentor. And this time frame turned into a pivotal moment in his development as an artist. He acquired the authoritative voice, emotional accuracy, and subdued intensity that would become his hallmarks through theatre roles in Shakespearean tragedies and contemporary dramas. He made a slow but impactful move to movies. Hopkins's early performances, such as The Lion in Winter, 1968, suggested a unique skill capable of capturing boiling intensity and moral subtlety. However, decades later, in 1991, he made his breakthrough on a global scale with his iconic portrayal of Dr. Hannibal Lecter in The Silence of the Lambs. Hopkins developed a classic cinematic villain whose terrifying gentility still unnerves audiences in a part requiring spooky intelligence, chilling composure, and an almost mesmerizing presence. He only made an appearance on film for roughly 16 minutes, but he won the Academy Award for Best Actor, demonstrating that depth of impact, not duration, is the ultimate measure of mastery. Hopkins went on to create an impressive body of work that demonstrated his ability in a variety of genres, from historical epics to psychological drama. He played a polite but emotionally controlled butler in movies like The Remains of the Day, 1993, whose inner conflicts demonstrated the actor's talent for nuanced, multi-layered acting. His performance of Richard Nixon in Oliver Stone's 1995 film Nixon demonstrated the bravery of an actor prepared to embody real-life characters with unvarnished honesty and nuance. Great acting is as much about vulnerability as it is about strength, as demonstrated by his roles as a troubled missionary in The Mission, a devoted but elderly advisor in Thor, and the tormented father in The Father, 2020, a performance so potent that it won him his second Academy Award at the age of 83. Hopkins' contributions to theater and television are just as well regarded outside of the film industry. His portrayal of Dr. Ford in Westworld introduced him to a new audience, who found his ability to combine philosophical depth, threat, and sensitivity to be absolutely captivating. He has also maintained a strong bond with music throughout his life. He is an accomplished pianist and composer who has composed symphonies and played with orchestras, demonstrating a lifelong love of the expressive language of music. These artistic endeavors paint a deeper personal picture of a man for whom art is not only a career but also who he is. Despite his success, Anthony Hopkins has faced personal struggles that add even more significance to his accomplishments. He talked candidly about his battles with alcoholism, which he conquered in 1975. A significant turning point in his life was his sobriety journey, which gave him the ability to regain his clarity, focus, and confidence. He is an example to performers and anyone facing their own challenges because of his fortitude and willingness to talk openly about trying times. Hopkins's philosophy, which he emphasized in his inspirational lectures and interviews, is based on acceptance, self-forgiveness, and inner serenity. Anthony Hopkins left behind a legacy as impressive as his work on the big screen during his lengthy and illustrious television career. Early on, his television accomplishments started to garner significant attention. Most famously, he earned the British Academy Television Award for Best Actor for his captivating performance in the 1972 rendition of War and Peace, which was so nuanced and well executed. His remarkable ability to give classic literary characters emotional depth, psychological nuance, and compelling presence, qualities that would characterize his work for decades, was demonstrated in this part. When Hopkins took on some of the most difficult biographical roles of his career in the late 1970s and early 1980s, his supremacy on television persisted. Critics had previously acknowledged his terrifying, tightly controlled portrayal of Charles Lindbergh in the 1976 Lindbergh kidnapping case, which earned him his first Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Lead Actor. Hopkins had a unique talent for accurately and emotionally capturing complicated historical personalities. He gave another remarkable performance as Adolf Hitler in The Bunker, 1981, just a few years later. His depiction, which was both intense and unsettling, earned him his second Primetime Emmy Award and solidified his status as one of the most daring and revolutionary actors in television. Hopkins returned to television for parts that pushed his artistic boundaries even after he became a global movie star. He co-starred with Ian McKellen in the BBC's 2015 film The Dresser, which explored friendship, aging, and the agonizing demands of a life on stage. His performance received a lot of attention for its emotional honesty and subdued tenderness. Then, in PBS's King Lear 2018, he played the iconic part of King Lear, portraying Shakespeare's tragic ruler with a poignant representation of crumbling authority and raw emotional intensity. 3 major marriages have shaped Anthony Hopkins' personal life, each of which took place at a distinct stage in his professional and personal development. In 1966, while he was still establishing himself as a rising star on the British stage and starting to break into the film and television industries, he was married for the first time to Petronella Barker. Barker, an English actor, talked about his early creative life and how he dealt with the challenges of a budding performing career. The unpredictable nature of professional achievement, rigorous performance schedules, and lengthy rehearsals. They had a daughter, Abigail, during their marriage, but Hopkins' battles with alcoholism and his intense job focus caused a lot of stress at home. When the marriage ended in 1972, he was left with complicated feelings on personal accountability and parenthood. Despite the challenges, this time had a significant impact on him, teaching him valuable lessons about relationships, ambition, and the sacrifices required of a career in the performing arts. Hopkins married Jennifer Linton in 1973, a year after his first divorce, and they had a second, lengthy, and significant marriage. Linton was not an actress, rather, she worked as an assistant in film production and then as an administrator. Although she was not in the spotlight, Linton had extensive knowledge of the inner workings of the entertainment industry. Her ability to stay organized and her calm demeanor gave Hopkins stability over some of the most pivotal decades of his career. Linton became a stabilizing force over the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s as Hopkins gained international fame from critically acclaimed stage productions to significant Hollywood productions. She supported him through his struggles with alcoholism until he finally became sober in 1975 and helped establish a domestic setting where he could escape the demands of celebrity. His worldwide work schedule put a lot of strain on their marriage. For example, he resided in the United States for extended periods of time while she stayed in London for her own job. Although tolerable for a considerable amount of time, this distance ultimately led to the relationship's slow emotional breakdown. One of the longest-lasting relationships in his life, they have been together for nearly 30 years. An era that had helped him through the most pivotal phases of his career achievement came to an end when the marriage terminated in 2002. An entirely new spirit entered Anthony Hopkins' life in 2003 when he married Stella Arroyave, an artist and antiques trader from Colombia. Arroyave was employed at an antique store in Los Angeles when they first met. Hopkins has also frequently talked kindly about how her presence gave him new life during a period when he was experiencing emotional instability. Much younger than Hopkins, Arroyave had a lively personality and a joyous energy that drastically changed the tone of his later years. His marriage to Arroyave has been marked by harmony, creativity, and friendship, in contrast to the chaos of his early life. She inspired him to pursue new interests, including painting, writing, philanthropy, and a fresh understanding of ordinary life away from the demands of performing. Hopkins describes her as an uplifting influence that brought stability and lightness into his life, and he credits her with helping him get through times of emotional loneliness and sadness. Together, they have established a cozy, creative California home life, distant from his early career's worries. And their marriage is still going strong, representing fortitude, development, and the potential for change at any point in life. The renowned Laurence Olivier, Anthony Hopkins' mentor, competition, inspiration, and perhaps the cause of his darkest fears, was finally open to him at the age of 87. Hopkins started opening up in interviews and talks after decades of separation from the turbulent early years of his career, exposing the nuanced reality of a guy he previously considered to be virtually legendary. Hopkins claimed that Olivier was enormous and that you could feel it in your bones when you were in his shadow. In the late 1960s, Hopkins frequently talked about how their first experiences at the National Theatre were virtually unreal. He was a young, ambitious Welsh actor entering an establishment that Olivier had molded with his own commanding demeanor. Hopkins remembered, it was like entering a cathedral where Olivier was the high priest. His voice, his motions, his sheer strength, everything centered around him. For the first time in my life, it was intimidating. Hopkins was forced to hone all of his instincts by that intimidation. If he hadn't struggled to maintain his position, he thought he would have drowned in such a setting. However, he also acknowledged that when Olivier felt like it, he was capable of being incredibly giving and kind. Hopkins recalled instances in which the elderly actor gave brief but profound insights, including guidance on breathing, pacing, and taking control of the stage instead of just showing there. Hopkins clarified, he had this ability to cut through all the nonsense with a single sentence. He might say something like, "Just be, don't act." Suddenly, I knew exactly what he meant. However, Hopkins also exposed the man's challenging side, which was seldom discussed in public during Olivier's lifetime. He admitted that Olivier could face intense competition, even danger, particularly from young performers with exceptional potential. Hopkins stated that he could be lovely on certain days and completely skin you alive on others. He disliked being put to the test. I believe that he recognized aspects of himself in me, such as my ambition and stubbornness, which compounded matters. Hopkins acknowledged that he frequently felt overwhelmed by the need to win Olivier's approval, please him, and keep the older actor from losing his volatile temper. Hopkins's intense battle with self-doubt during that time was one of his most striking discoveries. He was incredibly talented, yet he frequently felt like a fraud. He admitted, "I was scared. I believed I was just an asteroid drifting in, ready to burn up, and Olivier was the sun. I was waiting for someone to give me a shoulder touch and tell me, 'Okay, Hopkins, you can go back to Wales with me now.'" He worked with a fury that occasionally verged on obsession because of that anxiety. Hopkins also discussed how his friendship with Olivier influenced both the technical and emotional aspects of his subsequent career. He acknowledged that he gained knowledge on what to avoid and what to imitate. Hopkins claimed that although he taught me the value of greatness, he also made me aware of the perils of striving for perfection. Olivier desired perfection, but that is unachievable. Observing him taught me not to subject myself to such torment. Hopkins eventually developed a deep sense of gratitude for the tumultuous mentorship. He became the performer that the world came to adore because of the tension, the conflicts, and the intensity. I owe him a debt I can never pay back, he thought, regardless of our differences. I wouldn't be who I am now without Olivier. He frightened me into improving. Hopkins finally summed up the truth he had been carrying for years with the clarity of age. Laurence Olivier was a true titan, brilliant, imperfect, vulnerable, and scary. And I felt extremely fortunate to have been in his circle long enough to get any knowledge at all.